puzzle. Catch up. Like, it moves more here, below the knee. I'm really good at myself as well. Yes. It's what the mind of.
Sorry. You're going to run away before you start.
Yeah, I think there's still 11 days.
ERG, white smoke.
ERG.
I do, right? We're going to start, so the camera's going to be there.
And each one is a different thing. And then what's it, 70 page?
And a voice note actually for that, yeah.
What?
We already have
Oh no. Is that the
podcast?
apparently it's going to be
It's going to be here. What? Well, I think there's strict rules against using this room.
They like mentioned six discards.
Like the only thing we can Netflix. If I walk around in like if I look at a car,
Most criminals
also, if I'm like 90 years old driving a car,
yeah.
I might be still
Or it had a very obvious machete value. You're just excited to see it. Not so far away. We went to
I think they come back home.
they've offered dinner, I remember.
if I were
You've got the long way to it's not built up.
yeah, well,
Yeah, more space.
it's much more
Not going to be long to wait for people to get round.
I don't know how much I've done
Are you?
Yeah, San Diego. That thing. They told us we were going to the Navy. So I they get you there hours before.
When Darren went, I know.
And they just put us on the dot. Like,
Do they like drinking?
Yeah, they do. They've
God
got
knows
a
how.
special bit that they put up.
But they do.
And it wasn't actually that warm. It was only like 50 degrees, so none of us thought.
Yeah, but like, if you're
No,
on
it's-
holiday,
Then we realised
if
we
you're on
got
holiday,
late.
you want to have dinner.
No, that's
Back.
you.
Like beach
I think
trips.
it's not bad.
Yeah, I know. Look around with big.
Yeah,
I think that's Mark
No,
13.
that's the episode.
I think that's Mark 13.
8 days till Brazil.
Rwanda sounds like
They do Nordic.
Dave Barrett.
We should go there. There's a porch station. Especially if
Oh yeah, no, I've just texted Sophie about that.
okay, well, she's done.
But she hasn't responded.
She's done otherwise she likes so many.
Yeah, I know. I'm Sam texted me.
Yeah.
I don't know if someone does.
I'm
And then he was here till like 6 or 7 o'clock. He tried to leave a couple of times. He's like, oh, I'm on the sleeping bag. And then he kept just going back to his desk and carrying on working. And I said, "Shit, why don't you go home?" Eventually he did leave at about 6 or 7.
I said it was coming before 12. Everything's happening all at once.
That's good. Hopefully they'll draw this out, mate. Because that means we'll start seeing it.
well, I mean,
Can't have that process.
it's supposed to happen.
No, not yet. No, I think the, I think that
Look that way, man. Because basically,
that's why I was just checking, looking at that so to see if there's just for the press and probably people who don't hold.
Are they two separate things?
Yes, it's going to be a mission statement.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
Not see it, Dan. Honestly.
That was perfect. Thank you so much.
Actually, I'm not sure.
He joined the ERG.
There is a line before that, but it's probably not.
Yeah, so you wanted to smart across the bit.
Fucking everything at once, that's what
Oh, I see. Yeah.
I know she's one more thing.
What do you think witnessing going to be booted out?
I did not anticipate this would be so.
Is it? Oh, were you?
Oh, has it been released? It's released.
Well, I think this is just us. What's this for? What's happening?
For you. Thanks, man.
What's this?
The ERG, we all seen the evidence.
Oh, I see the ERG, right, and I'm in the privilege.
No, yes.
Oh, you both of you.
So the best Wi-Fi I keep by my list is DD11.
Sorry, I know this sounds like a silly thing to say, but do you want to talk to Steve? It clashes with the ERG correcting that I just want to talk about. But Steve is in the office and okay, good. Cheers, my love.
Yeah, so I think Robert should be Yeah, I would say I would do it. I think like the ERG stuff is
Johnny, has he actually reprinted your sketch?
Has he?
He kind of reads it like that. He's apparently shocked.
Is that just a function of
That's a flaw in his argument.
That's a little thing which she's seen when she's doing her investigation. And also says, I heard you on real at the job. No, secret. Are you too close to this?
Number 10 to go against the fire guidance is Martin Reynolds. It was BYOB. Incredible citation, that one. I'm not sure this is
Although Sue Gray does seem to be quite supportive of him.
well, she was quite supportive in her reports.
Such a lawyer-written thing.
Meetings at the garden and number 10 positively. None of us. Really? Francois is going to come out. I'm sure. He's got a long history. He's misunderstood. There is one thing for which the current Prime Minister Rishi Sunak given flexibility. Let's lead with Rishi.
What a question. If I shot every time someone asked me out, I would answer.
No cake was eaten and no one even sang happy birthday. Sounds like a good That's great.
Yeah, there we go, there's the reference to times.
Oh, is he cited it?
Yeah. It's implausible that these are the gathering which moved out if anyone considered it to be contrary to his parents, which is too fair enough.
Yes.
The committee says you've done all analysis of fairness and process. I'm afraid I do not accept that. So
Francois is texting Christopher Choke from his side.
No, we don't.
right.
There we go.
Goodness.
Should I just pass them back?
Yeah,
Why don't we do that?
possible.
Or maybe these
Pass now. There'll be more. There's more as well. There's more, don't worry. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. The copy of the press release.
This is fun.
Has anyone not got one? Anyone?
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. Right. No, we're going to do it. We're going to do it out here. Is that a pool camera?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to make a brief statement, and then I'm going to take 4 or 5 questions, because I want you actually all to read this thing. So
Do you mind facing the camera?
I'm saying, well, then these people will be upset with me, but I'll have a go. All right. So, commenting on the release of the legal assessment of the Windsor framework, the ERG chairman, Mark Francois, said, I'd like to thank the Star Chamber, chaired by Sybil Cash MP and ably supported by Martin Howe KC, Barnabas Reynolds and David Jones MP, for their diligent and thorough examination of the legal implications of the Windsor framework. The Star Chamber's principal findings are that EU law will still be supreme in Northern Ireland, the rights of its people under the 1800 Act of Union are not restored, the Green Lane is not really a green lane at all, the Stormont break is practically useless, and the framework itself has no exit other than through a highly complex legal process. That is a very brief summary of the findings of the Star Chamber. You should hopefully all have a copy of the report with a press release, and there's a nice diagram on the back that shows you how the Stormont break, in theory at least, is meant to work. I hope that's a quick summary. I can take 4 or 5 quick questions. So, sorry, let's start here.
Andy Bell, 5 News.
Yeah.
Do you accept that as a result of this, if the government were to follow your proposals, there will be a hard border in Northern Ireland? That is a logical conclusion of rejecting what we have now.
No, I don't accept that at all. And the reasons why that is not correct are set out in the report, but I would encourage you to read it. So who's next? Yes. Tom.
Will you be voting against the proposals, therefore, and how many ERG colleagues of yours do you expect will follow suit?
Right, on that, the DUP have made their position very plain. They're going to vote against. We, to some degree, have been critical of the government for not allowing people enough time to digest everything. So, for instance, the statutory instrument and the explanatory notes only came out yesterday. So we don't want to be hoist by our own petard. So we've just made this public now. It is available on the internet, and the email address at Lawyers for Britain is on your press release. If you could promulgate that, we would be grateful, so that other members of Parliament can read this. This is by no means just for the ERG. We'd like all members of Parliament, ideally, to read this before the vote tomorrow, so they know exactly what they're voting on. And we'd like members of the public, and particularly people in Northern Ireland, to have an opportunity to read this report so that they understand what is at stake. Because we need to allow people time to digest this, the ERG will be meeting again tomorrow in this room at the same time, once people have had an opportunity to digest all this documentation, and some of it is pretty heavy legalese, but I've tried to summarise it for you. We as a group will discuss what attitude, if any, to take, and we'll be having that meeting just before PMQs, and we're meeting at 10:30, and then immediately before the vote. So that is when we as a group will decide what we're going to do. When, to be fair, Tom, people have had a chance to plough through some fairly complex documentation.
So can we just take from that that you may actually abstain, you may not?
Well, the group hasn't taken the decision yet, and ultimately, this has always been our way, it will be down to every individual colleague in the group. So I'm not going to preempt that decision for all the reasons I've just given you. But now, can I just make a point about the Stormont, the so-called Stormont break? You've got a diagram on the back. Let me see if I can summarise this for you very quickly. 1. It only applies if Stormont is up and running. So if, for instance, Sinn Féin, for any reason, were to collapse the Assembly, the break would no longer apply. Secondly, it's very limited in its scope. It applies to goods, but not to state aid, VAT, the majority of the customs code, so-called trade defence measures, and the electricity market. So it's only applicable in narrow circumstances. 3. The EU law being proposed, against which the break could be theoretically deployed, has to have a significant impact on everyday life in Northern Ireland in a way which is liable to persist. Also, it can only be exercised in exceptional circumstances. But the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland can decide not to accept the break being used in exceptional circumstances. It has to be discussed in the UK-EU Joint Committee as a matter of urgency, where the UK can decide not to implement the break. Even if they do decide to implement the break via the Joint Committee, the EU can then still object to that, and the matter is then referred to arbitration, where the UK could lose. So that is clearly not a veto. A veto means you want to do something and I can stop you. This is not a veto, which is how it has been characterised for the past 3 weeks. Even if after all of that you win at arbitration, and there's no guarantee you will, the EU can then implement remedial measures, i.e. they can retaliate. And then lastly, after all of that, if you've had the temerity to pull the break, the UK, via the Joint Committee, then has to produce the results of an urgent review as to why they felt the break had to be used in the first place. That is the Stormont break.
Do you think
That's
you've been
action.
misled?
Sorry?
Do you think you've been misled?
I'm going to leave that to others to judge, but I want people to read this document which explains all of this in detail. But that is why, having explained it to you, I hope having walked you through it, and thank you for your patience. Just a second, and thank you for your patience, because that is why we have said that the break is practically useless.
So will you vote against it?
Let's wait till we've got our meeting tomorrow.
But given all you said, is there any way you could not vote against it?
Let's wait till what happens tomorrow. Thank you very much indeed for your attention, ladies and gentlemen. It's all on, I hope the press release helps you. It's all on the internet. Please propagate it as widely as you can. Thank you very much.
Basically,